My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 32, and my family forgot to invite me to Christmas, so I bought a mountain cabin. When they showed up with a locksmith to carve my locks open for my sister's healing retreat, they thought I was alone. They didn't see the cameras, the deputy's card, or the letter my lawyer had ready. Snow kept falling like shredded paper from a bad headline. I kept the door shut, and for once, I didn't apologize. But they didn't know what I knew. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been left out by your own family. Because this isn't just a story about a locked cabin in the snow. It's about what happens when the quiet one finally decides to lock the door and mean it. I grew up in a house where love had assigned seating. My mother, Linda, ran the table like a judge with a gentle smile. Marissa, my little sister, sat in the place right under the chandelier where everyone could see her laugh. I sat by the fridge, next to the humming motor, out of the frame, but close enough to refill the water glasses. When I was 10, my science project won the regional fair. I waited for my parents to show up at the school gym. They didn't. Mom texted later. We had to take Marissa to her dance recital. Honey, you understand. I did. I always did. The next morning, she taped Marissa's recital ticket on the fridge. My ribbon went in a drawer. I didn't know it back then, but that was the first time I learned how silence can sound like approval if you let it. At 16, I worked weekends at a grocery store. My paycheck covered gas and part of Marissa's cheer camp. Dad said it built character. I thought it built resentment slow, brick by brick, but resentment is quiet. It doesn't yell. It sits in the passenger seat, hands folded, waiting for you to notice it. When Marissa turned 16, she got a car, a white Civic with a pink steering wheel cover. I was 20, and my job was to teach her how to drive. She hit the mailbox on our first run. Dad laughed until he coughed. Mom said, Ethan, don't make her feel bad. I fixed the dent myself with sandpaper and spray paint. The next week, they posted a photo of her standing by the car. Our girl, driving into her future. No one mentioned I was the one who made it drivable. I swallowed it, but it carved deeper than I thought. When I got my first internship at a local paper, it was unpaid. I told Dad I'd finally be writing real stories. He nodded, distracted, asked if I could mow the lawn before the weekend. 3 days later, Marissa landed a part-time gig writing Instagram captions for a boutique. Mom posted 12 photos of her desk setup. Our little wordsmith, she wrote. My father commented, so proud. I brought cupcakes to celebrate. Nobody took one home. Years later, I wrote an article that exposed a city contract scam. It got traction online enough that my editor called me into his office. For a second, I thought it was praise. He told me to take a cooling break. Too loud, he said. Too opinionated. When I told Dad, he said, that's the problem with journalism, you make enemies for free. Be grateful you've got steady work. I wanted to ask him if steady meant invisible, but I kept my head down. Wrote at night. Slept through weekends. Meanwhile, Marissa grew from captions to content strategist. She knew the right hashtags and the right angles. Mom said, she just knows how to reach people. I wanted to reach people too. I just didn't want to sell them something. Thanksgiving 2 years ago was my warning. I brought pie and a bottle of wine that cost more than it should have. Marissa showed up late, no dish, only a story about how the butcher ruined her cut. Mom said, be kind, she's had a week. I carved the turkey while Dad filmed Marissa's chef's kiss gravy for her story. After dinner, Mom cornered me by the sink. Sweetheart, can you look at Marissa's budget? She's struggling. I said, I already helped with her last month's rent. She smiled like a teacher correcting a mistake. Yes, but you're good with money. You don't need much. That line. It kept coming back like a bad headline. You don't need much. A week later, Dad called. No hello, just, don't take it out on your sister. She's carrying a lot. I asked, what am I carrying? He said, you're fine, Ethan. You always are. Fine, reliable, replaceable. When Marissa's startup failed, I lent her $1,200. She said she'd pay me back after tax season. Tax season became after the relaunch. The relaunch became once brand deals pick up. I never saw the money, but I saw the receipts: artisan chairs, a trip to Nashville, a neon sign that said good vibes only. I told myself I was older, steadier, that family meant stepping up. But somehow, stepping up always meant stepping over myself. The week before last Christmas, The family group chat blew up. "Can't wait for Christmas at Marissa's," Mom wrote, a flood of emojis after it. I waited for my name. It never came. I typed, "Should I bring anything?" 10 minutes. 15. Then Mom replied, "Honey, you're probably busy with work, and Marissa's place is small. We'll do something later, okay? It's easier this way. It's easier this way." The words stuck like a pit in my throat. I told myself it wasn't personal. It was logistics. But when Marissa texted me privately, "No hard feelings, big bro. My oven's tiny. We'll hang after the holidays. Drinks on me." Something shifted. Across from me on the train, a kid pressed his nose to the glass and shouted, "Snow." I watched the reflection of my own face, tired and dim in the window. I unlocked my phone and opened a link I'd saved months ago. Small mountain cabin, Cedar Ridge. 2 bedrooms. East-facing porch. Quiet. I called the agent the next morning. Not to buy it, just to ask how old the stove was. He said, "The view would make a monk swear." That line made me laugh for the first time in weeks. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents. Not Marissa. I just signed the papers. I didn't know it then, but that decision, that tiny act of ownership, would be the first real no I'd ever said to my family. The cabin sat 2 hours from the city, a heartbeat past cell service. When I first saw it, the road was crusted with ice and lined with pines that bent like old men. The front porch sagged, the roof blushed red from rust, and the stove inside growled like a bad-tempered dog. It was perfect, imperfect enough to be mine. Cody, the real estate agent, wore a parka and a grin too wide for the cold. "It's a fixer-upper," he said, which meant nobody else wants it. He handed me the keys, and for a second, the metal felt heavier than it should. I drove back down the hill with the windows cracked, the air biting at my knuckles, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was running from something. I was driving towards something quiet. Inside, the cabin smelled like pine dust and old coffee. The windows whined when the wind hit. I unpacked 1 suitcase, 2 sweaters, a coffee mug, my laptop, my grandfather's hammer. I wasn't planning on a new life, just a place that didn't echo with someone else's noise. I set up a desk by the east window and watched the first snowfall stick. The first morning I woke there, I made pancakes on the cranky stove and burnt the first batch. The smoke curled toward the ceiling, and I laughed at myself. It felt absurd and holy, like I was baptizing the place in mistakes that were mine alone. I didn't tell my family. I didn't tell anyone but Priya. She'd been my friend since college, the one who edited my essays when I got lost in commas. When I texted her, "I bought a cabin," she replied, "Finally." I didn't know what she meant until later. For weeks, I balanced deadlines and firewood. Wrote by daylight, read by stove light. My days grew small, quiet, clean, until Christmas morning. Snow piled knee-deep outside. I brewed coffee, leaned against the window, and watched flakes drift like ash. My phone buzzed, the family group chat exploding with pictures from Marissa's living room, matching pajamas, hot cocoa, a sign that said family always. Dad's thumb smeared in the corner of every photo. No one texted me directly. I took 1 photo of my own, a blue mug on the sill, the cabin glowing gold from the stove. I sent it. "Merry Christmas from the mountains." Finally did it. Mom replied first, "You bought a cabin?" "Dad, looks pricey." "Marissa, stop. That's adorable. Oh my God. We need a getaway so bad. You're the best for thinking of us. When can we book a weekend?" I stared at the message. The nerve of it made my pulse jump. Me. It's not a rental. Marissa. Lol. Okay. But like we're family. Me. I'm spending the winter here. It's not set up for guests. Dad. We'll chat after the holiday. They chatted 2 weeks later by showing up. I'd gone down to the general store for groceries, coffee, nails, and a snow shovel. When I came back, tire tracks clawed through the fresh snow up my drive. The porch rail held a smear where someone had steadied themselves, and on the mat lay a folded note, my mother's handwriting neat and soft. "We popped by. Marissa loved it. She and Noah really need a reset, and we thought a few months out here would be healing. We brought a locksmith since we couldn't find your spare, but we didn't go in. Call us to coordinate keys. Hugs and kisses." They brought a locksmith. I felt my skin buzz. I checked the porch camera feed. 3 angles, crisp and clear. Mom in a silver puffer coat. Dad in his old beanie, Marissa filming like an influencer. Noah lugging a toolbox he clearly borrowed for effect. Then the locksmith bending toward my lock, his tools flashing in the cold light. The footage cut out when the motion alert storage filled. My chest went hollow. I called Priya first. She said 3 words. Save the footage. Then she sent me a legal template before I could finish my next breath. Then I called the Mountain County substation. Deputy Raymond picked up on the second ring. Name? He asked. Ethan Cole. I said. Address? I gave it. He whistled low. Yeah, I know that ridge. You got him on camera? 3 angles, I said, including the locksmith. Good. Don't delete anything. I'll come by. That night, I sat by the table, tea cooling beside my elbow, and watched the footage again. Frame by frame. Mom's face, when the lock resisted the way she turned, half laughing, like this was all a misunderstanding. It wasn't. I looked at the folded note again, its edges damp from my boots. The line that broke me wasn't about Marissa needing healing. It was the word we thought, we brought. We didn't go in. They always spoke as a unit. I was never part of the we. Outside, snow swallowed the tire tracks until the drive was clean again. Inside, something in me hardened. Not anger. Something colder, steadier. I turned off the camera feed and sat in the dark. For the first time in my life, I didn't wonder what they'd think if I said no. I wondered what would happen if I didn't say anything at all. The next morning, I woke to a string of missed calls, 3 from Mom, 2 from Dad, 1 from Marissa. I didn't pick up. The voicemail notifications blinked like warnings. When I finally played the first one, Mom's voice filled the cabin, soft as ever, sugar over steel. Sweetheart, don't be upset. We didn't actually go in. It was just planning. You know how your sister's been struggling. Her anxiety, her followers, the pressure she needs a place to breathe. Then Dad's voice, low and irritated. Son, don't make this a thing. We didn't break anything. You've always been too literal. Marissa's message came last. Ethan, it's not that deep. You have a whole cabin and no one to share it with. We're family. Family shares. That sentence, family shares, stuck like a splinter. I poured coffee, stared out at the snow. A fox cut across the ridge, silent and sure. I wanted to be that untouchable, self-contained. Priya texted, Deputy stopped by. I wrote back, yeah. He watched the footage. He said we could file. Her reply came fast. Do it. Silence only works when people respect it. I didn't file. Not yet. Part of me wanted to believe they'd realize what they'd done. That maybe guilt could thaw what years of favoritism had frozen solid. But guilt doesn't work on people who think they're right. A day later, the phone rang again. Dad. I let it ring twice before answering. Son, he started, the tone that meant lecture disguised as conversation. Dad. Your mother's upset. She said you called the cops. I didn't. The deputy called me. You could have told us before escalating. You brought a locksmith. He exhaled through his nose, a tired sigh I'd known my whole life. We thought it was yours, our semantics. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. You mean mine? You don't need to be dramatic. You tried to open my door. Watch your tone. Ethan, we raised you better than this. That line, we raised you better, always came out when they'd run out of logic. I hung up before he could use my full name. By evening, Marissa's version of the story had already hit social media. A cozy caption under a photo of snow. Sometimes family forgets what sharing means. Praying for healing and forgiveness this holiday. The comments flooded in. Heart emojis, stay strong girl. And family drama is the worst. I watched the likes climb like flies on a wound. I didn't comment. I didn't have to. My silence became its own headline. 2 days later, the twist came. Cody, the real estate agent, called. Hey, weird thing. Your mom reached out, asked if you were looking to sell, said she was handling family property matters. She what? Yeah, said she had your permission. She doesn't. I figured, but she asked for my card. Said she'd call back. I thanked him, hung up, and stood there for a long minute, my pulse pounding in my ears. It wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was an operation. That night, I drafted an email to Priya. She replied with a clean, brutal line. Send them a cease and desist. Then stop explaining yourself. I wrote the letter, printed it on heavy paper, mailed a copy to each of them. I didn't add a note. I didn't sign it. Love, Ethan. Just Ethan Cole, property owner, Cedar Ridge. The next morning, I got a text from Dad. Real men don't hide behind lawyers. Followed by Mom's, you're hurting your sister. And finally Marissa's, you're acting like you're Elon Musk guarding a yacht. It's a cabin, don't make it weird. I almost laughed. The arrogance of it was almost art. That night, I opened my laptop to work on a story but couldn't write a word. The radiator hissed, the stove clicked, and I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired. Tired of being the family's safety net. Tired of being called strong just because no one cared to check if I was tired. Outside, the wind howled against the windows, sharp and high. Inside, I started to draft something different, not an article, not yet just a record. Dates, quotes, screenshots, voicemails, a map of how love had turned into trespass. I didn't know it then, but that list would become my first real weapon. A week passed in static silence, the kind that hums just before something cracks. I kept working, turning in articles about corruption and infrastructure failures, but every sentence felt hollow. My real story was unfolding on my own property. On Thursday, the phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I picked up. A man's voice, clipped, casual. Mr. Cole, this is Kyle from Northern Locksmith Services. Just confirming you wanted a rekey job for your Cedar Ridge property, right? My throat went dry. Who authorized that? Linda Cole. Said she was the homeowner's mother. Gave the address, said you were away. I could hear the whine of his van in the background, the way his voice tilted when he realized I wasn't who he expected. You're not there? I am the homeowner, I said. And if you show up, you'll be talking to a deputy. He stammered, apologized, said he'd flagged the number. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, not from fear but from recognition. They hadn't stopped. They'd just changed tactics. That night, I installed new locks, high security, key control systems that required paperwork for duplicates. I took pictures of every bolt, every serial number, and saved them to 3 drives. I started sleeping with my phone on loud, camera feeds open on my nightstand. Friday morning, I drove into town for supplies. Jack Rivers, the old man from the next property over, waved me down at the diner. Your folks were asking around, he said, stirring his coffee. Wanted to know if there's a hardware store that copies keys. My stomach nodded. When? Yesterday. Your mom did most of the talking, but the young man, the one with the expensive hair, did the smiling. Noah. Jack nodded, eyes narrowing. Son, you might want to get ahead of that. Folks round here don't take kindly to boundary games. I thanked him, left cash on the counter, and drove back up the ridge fast enough to spray gravel. My pulse didn't slow until I saw the cabin still sealed, the door untouched. That night, the group chat resurrected itself. New name, family real. Colin must have made it. The messages rolled in like a wave. Mom, we made mistakes, but you're taking things too far. Dad, a son doesn't drag his family into court. Marissa, we found a tenant for your place. You could make $2,000 a month, just let us stay there the first quarter. We'll manage it. Noah, we'll handle cleaning, content shoots, revenue split 70/30. Win-win. I laughed out loud, one sharp sound that startled even me. They were trying to monetize my front door. Turn my piece into a business plan. Priya called that night. Don't answer them, she said. Don't even acknowledge. Silence is stronger than sarcasm. But if I ignore them, they'll twist it. They already are, she said. Your boundaries don't need a pitch deck. For a moment, I imagined what she saw, me hunched over the table in that wooden box of a home, lit only by the flicker of the stove. A man still trying to reason with ghosts. Saturday evening, I opened the footage again, scrolling back through clips I'd already memorized, their faces on my porch, Noah's hand on the lock. But then I froze. There, in one frame I'd missed before, was a detail that sliced through me. Mom pointing toward the kitchen window, showing the locksmith where the latch was weaker. She hadn't tried to stop them. She'd helped. That realization didn't feel fiery or dramatic. It landed quiet, like a closing door. I saved the clip under a new folder name. Evidence, 2. Then I sat down, opened a blank document, and began to write not a report, not a complaint, but a story. About love that disguises itself as control. About the kind of kindness that comes with a key in the lock. By Sunday night, snow started falling again, soft as ash. I watched it through the window until the flakes blurred together. My phone buzzed once more, a text from Dad. You're breaking your mother's heart. I typed back. Then maybe she shouldn't have tried to break my door. I didn't send it. I just let the words sit there, glowing in the dark. The storm came in fast, the kind that swallows sound before it steals the light. By dusk, the trees had vanished behind a white curtain, and the cabin walls groaned like an old ship taking on ice. I stacked logs in the stove, set a pot of water to boil, and tried to convince myself the night would pass like any other, quiet, forgettable. At 9:14 p.m., the motion alert pinged. Twin headlights cut through the snow outside, crawling up my drive like a slow, deliberate thought. I stepped to the window and saw them. Mom's SUV, then Noah's pickup sliding in behind it. My stomach clenched. The cameras flickered on, their feeds bright against the dim cabin light. Mom stepped out first, wrapped in that silver puffer, face tight with the kind of smile you wear to funerals. Dad climbed out next, jaw locked, flashlight in hand. Marissa followed, white boots. For hood, her phone already recording. Noah trailed behind, hood up, like the shadow of her entitlement. They didn't knock right away. They stood there, arguing in the snow. Then Mom raised her hand, rapped twice on the door, her knuckles dull against the wood. "Ethan, honey, let's talk." Behind her, Dad muttered something I couldn't catch. Marissa stepped closer. "This is insane," she said, voice rising. "You're making a scene. It's freezing out here." I stayed silent. The deputy's number was already pulled up on my phone. Noah stomped closer to the window. "Man, come on. Let's be reasonable." "You tried reason," I said through the door, calm, flat. "Then a locksmith." "Jesus, you're dramatic," Marissa snapped. "You'd rather freeze your own family than talk?" "It's private property," I said. "You don't have to like that to respect it." She scoffed. "You owe us, Ethan. You've always owed us." That line cut cleaner than any blade. I felt something inside me shift, an old muscle, too long clenched, finally giving way. Blue and red lights spilled across the trees. The sheriff's cruiser turned slowly up the hill, tires crunching against the drift. Deputy Raymond stepped out, his posture steady, his expression unreadable. "Evening, folks," he said, voice cutting through the wind. "We got a report about possible trespassing." Mom's face crumpled into her practiced sweetness. "Officer, this is all a misunderstanding. We're his family." Raymond nodded once, unimpressed. "And he's the property owner. That makes this porch private ground." Marissa crossed her arms. "He's making this a circus." Raymond didn't flinch. "Ma'am, I'm just here to keep it peaceful." Behind him, the cameras caught a flicker of movement. Noah, slipping away from the group, circling toward the back of the cabin. My stomach dropped. I checked the feed from the third camera. There he was, halfway through my back window, gloved hands prying the latch. I didn't yell, didn't move. I dialed Raymond's number and whispered, "Back window. He's in." He didn't hesitate. "Stay inside." Through the monitor, I watched his shadow move fast. One clean pivot, a shout, a blur of motion, then the sound of handcuffs snapping shut. When Raymond brought Noah around front, snow crusted on his jacket, the rest of them froze. Marissa's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Breaking and entering," Raymond said evenly. "Family or not, law's the law." Mom whispered, "Ethan, how could you?" I met her eyes through the glass. "I didn't make him climb through my window." For a long time, nobody spoke. The only sound was the wind brushing the porch rail. Raymond led them back, toward their cars, his flashlight bouncing across the snow. When their taillights vanished into the trees, I opened the door just a crack and let the night air bite my face. I didn't smile, but my voice was steady when I said it, half to myself, half to the dark. "I didn't trap them," I whispered. "I just learned how to lock the door." Inside, the kettle whistled, sharp and shrill, like applause from an empty room. The next morning, the storm had passed. The world outside looked erased, only white hills and black trees, like ink bleeding through paper. I brewed coffee, the kind that smells like burned toast, and replayed the footage from the night before. Every frame felt unreal. My mother's face, frozen mid-plea, my sister's disbelief, Noah's wrists cuffed in the snow. Deputy Raymond had filed the report himself. "You don't have to press charges," he'd said, "but now there's a record. Paperwork has a way of keeping people honest." That sentence stuck with me. Paperwork has a way of keeping people honest. I printed every clip, every email, every voicemail, labeled and sealed them in a folder marked Cole Family Boundaries. Then I sent copies to Priya. She called 2 hours later, her voice calm but sharper than I'd ever heard it. "You could publish this," she said. "Not as evidence, as truth." That night, I opened a blank document. The cursor blinked in rhythm with my pulse. I started typing not about them by name, but about the quiet cruelty of being the reliable one. About how you don't need much becomes an excuse to give you nothing. It wasn't revenge. It was record. By spring, the snow melted into long veins of water running through the yard. The first mail that arrived was a letter from my editor. The article I'd submitted under a pseudonym, "The House That Boundaries Built," had gone viral. Tens of thousands of shares. People saw themselves in it. Some guessed who wrote it. Mom sent a single text, "You've embarrassed us." I didn't answer. I just turned the porch light on as the sky darkened and watched the reflection of my own name on the mailbox. Ethan Cole. A name that finally meant mine. They thought they'd taken everything I had, but what they really gave me was a story no one could steal. If you've ever been the quiet one in your family, the one they overlook until they need something, then you already know how this story feels. Hit like and subscribe, because stories like this aren't rare. Most of us just don't film them. Sometimes, walking away isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Sometimes, locking the door is the only way to stay kind. And if you've ever had to build your peace from the wreckage of someone else's comfort, you're not alone. This story isn't over, it's just the first winter.